Frank Herbert's Dune series is undeniably some of the most innovative and forward-thinking science fiction that's ever been written. Unfortunately, because of Herbert's subtlety, it's also one of the most misunderstood works of fiction that's ever been released. Each book in the series focuses on a specific philosophical question. For the original, it's the problem of religious manipulation and false prophethood. Despite everything that traditional narrative arcs have ingrained in us, Paul is not truly the chosen one. As we go further in the series, Herbert tackles new questions, and somehow ever increasingly huge ones. While the Dune books start out as a dissection of the fallacy of the Chosen One arc, by the end of the series it becomes a meditation on what's necessary for humanity to survive in an ever-expanding universe. The way that Herbert lays out his philosophy is through the implementation of one term, an idea that readers of the series will be exceptionally familiar with: the Golden Path. Herbert constantly references it, but he never once outright explains what it means. The key to understanding Dune is understanding the Golden Path. This is the philosophy of one of the greatest minds of the 20th century. This is the philosophy of Frank Herbert. While the early installments in the Dune franchise are some of Herbert's most acclaimed works, they're largely focused on the story of Paul Atreides, and thus because of that singular focus on his main character, it's impossible for Herbert to really move into universal philosophy until the focus on Paul has been taken away. The point that this occurs at is very exact, and it happens in the closing pages of Dune Messiah, when Paul walks off into the desert, presumably to die. That ends up not being true, as we see him return as a man who goes by the Prophet in Children of Dune, but in Children of Dune, Paul's used mainly to underscore his shortcomings in relation to his son, Leto II. Paul was never a Kwisatz Haderach in the truest sense, but both he and Leto at one point had the potential to usher humanity along the Golden Path. Paul himself is a tragic character because he becomes so obsessed with refusing to do what has to be done in order to start the Golden Path. Both characters may have once had the potential to orchestrate the Golden Path, but only Leto was brave enough to do what had to be done to kickstart that new era. The reason that they both had the potential to do it can be boiled down to one word, and it's that word which is the crux of Herbert's entire philosophy: prescience. Yes, that very same power that allowed Paul the ability to execute his jihad is exactly what caused his downfall. It's no mistake that the driver of all political decisions in the world of Dune, the spice, can be boiled down to two main qualities. It's a life extender, but more importantly, it allows prescience. Prescience, in the simplest terms, is basically the ability to see into the future. Herbert goes to great lengths to show the power that prescience can bring because the benefits are obvious. Paul's rise to power is because of his prescience. God Emperor Leto's universal domination was possible because of his all-knowing prescience. He went to these lengths of showing the absolute power that true prescience can bring because he knew the clear draw that it could have on an individual. After all, who wouldn't want to be able to see events before others could? It would, quite literally, allow a person to become a god emperor given a long enough lifespan. And that is precisely why prescience is so dangerous. Every individual in Dune desires prescience because the ability to see further into the future than one's enemies is power in its truest sense. However, the absolute worst thing for humanity is to become prescient, because for Herbert, prescience is synonymous with fixed stability. For many people, long-term peace and stability are qualities that they imagine as necessary for a true utopia to exist. For Herbert, those same qualities are the exact ones that cause life to lose its meaning. We see his argument for this most obviously through the evolution of the Fremen as the story continues. The Fremen in Paul's time are among the most admirable of people because of the harsh conditions that they had to overcome in order to survive. When every drop of water could be the difference between life and death, it only stands to reason that the Fremen appreciate what they have far more than those water-fat Caledonians like Paul and Jessica. Though life for the Fremen is harder, harsher, and more unforgiving than for almost anyone else in the civilized universe, it's through that struggle that meaning is created. Herbert illustrates this to an even greater extent by showing what happened to the Fremen once they achieved their goal of turning Arrakis into a lush oasis. Suddenly, life wasn't so harsh for them. Suddenly, every drop of water became less precious, and because their hold on life became firmer, their appreciation for it lessened equally. The Fremen were left with no outlet for the energy that before had been used simply to survive. Without any way of relieving that energy, they were forced to create new avenues through which to release that energy. And that's when the problems of society started to take hold on them. What had been a proud people who would look with scorn upon the wasting of energy now became one that fell victim to politicking, infighting, and corruption. The Fremen conquered the universe through Paul's jihad, but their children were left to grow up in a world that was far too comfortable for them to learn true appreciation. Left to live a life that wasn't constantly spent trying to survive, the Fremen of old died out and became powerless. Leto II, who was God Emperor at this point, replaced his soldiers with the all-female legions of fish speakers, and the Fremen that lived comfortable lives under Leto were now so unrecognizable from their ancestors that they referred to them as Museum Fremen. Leto the God Emperor may have seemed a tyrannical dictator to many, he may have seemed the most benevolent ruler to many more, but his true aim didn't care what those he ruled over thought of him personally. Leto's golden path had a deceptively simple aim for ensuring the survival of humanity. Essentially, what he wanted to do was to turn every living soul in the universe into Fremen, and thus increase their appreciation for life so that they may never lose sight of the meaning that life provides again. His father, Paul, knew this was necessary as well, but he didn't have the strength to be the one who had to take on the burden of doing what was necessary. And exactly what was necessary, Leto's plan for the Golden Path, was this. The first step was Leto giving up his own humanity by merging with the sand trout. This was necessary because he needed to have a longer lifespan than any single individual had ever had if he was to teach humanity the lesson it needed to learn. And by becoming one with the sand trout, he was imbued with enough spice to keep him living for the millennia that he needed. He coupled this exceptional lifespan with his nearly omniscient prescience to take control of all of the spice supply left in the universe. This put him in the position of the most powerful being in the universe, and by becoming that supreme dictator, Leto transformed into the God Emperor. By this point, Leto had everything he needed to ensure he could teach humanity the necessary lesson, and the lesson he wanted to teach was simple. He needed to show that the worst thing that could ever happen to humanity would be ceaseless peace and stability. Yes, that's right. The single worst thing for the long-term survival of humanity, far worse than any of the atrocities of Paul Atreides' jihad, would be the unendingly peaceful reign of Leto II. Under that peaceful rule, everybody besides the God Emperor was utterly and completely subjugated. The Ixians couldn't expand their robotic innovation. The Tleilaxu were ultimately powerless despite their wiles. Even the Bene Gesserit that orchestrated so much of the goings-on of the universe before Leto were forced to give up everything to Leto. Leto ran the breeding program. He kept all Bene Gesserit in check. He tried to teach them his lesson, but they wouldn't listen. As a concept, a universe where an all-knowing benevolent God makes sure that every one of his lesser subjects experiences unending peace and tranquility sounds like paradise. The reality, as Frank Herbert goes so far to show, is much closer to hell. In a universe where there's nothing but peace and no appreciation of mere survival, not a single soul is able to appreciate their existence to the extent that a Fremen of old would. A Fremen from Paul's time would be grateful to Shai-Hulud simply for being able to survive one more day in the desert of Arrakis. Any of the comfortable people under Leto's rule could spend years without once appreciating the fine line between death and life. Because for Frank Herbert, life is meaningless without death, and a world where peaceful life is virtually assured every day essentially has no relationship with death. The worst thing that could happen to humanity is to cultivate a fixed, peaceful stability, and the only way Leto as God Emperor is able to show them that is by creating that world and making them live in it for countless generations. The point of Leto's entire reign, the point of the entire Golden Path, is to ingrain in the psyche of all of humanity the terrible existence that long-term peaceful rule can bring. Leto's aim is to rewire the human brain towards thinking that unending stability is tantamount to torture, and thus have them pursue a life where survival isn't certain. Leto's iron rule ended the only way that it could, the scattering. Though the original Fremen are eradicated, by scattering humanity to the far reaches of the universe, to the harshest conditions where survival isn't assured every day, Leto successfully turns everyone in the universe into Fremen in spirit. The value of life is only apparent when people realize how tenuous their hold on it is. That's the truth that the Fremen of Paul's time showed before they turned the deserts of Arrakis green. It's the truth that Leto Atreides II recognized, and the truth that he made sure that every living soul knew after his reign had ended. Because the philosophy of Dune, the philosophy of Frank Herbert, the meaning of the Golden Path is simple. Life is only meaningful when a person is able to recognize its impermanence. The true key to ensuring the long-term survival of humanity isn't unending peace. The true key is eternal hardship.